Yo, it's your boy JTG, aka Jay the God, one half of the illest tag team ever, Crime Time, and you are watching Pro Wrestling Planet. And we all know Pro Wrestling Planet is about that money. Yeah, that money. Yeah. Cheer.
WrestleMania 14 was the event that officially launched the Attitude Era into a full-scale cultural takeover of the wrestling world. The proverbial pot had been boiling for months at a time, and this was as much of a culmination as well as a turning point for the pro wrestling landscape in the late 1990s. Stone Cold Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, The Rock, Triple H, and yes, of course, the icing on the cake, Vince McMahon ponied up and paid the one and only Mike Tyson to partake in the event as well. This right here is one of my personal favorite WrestleManias for so many reasons, which I'll get into. Yes, please join me, ladies and gentlemen, as I, your excellent host, The Brand, tells you the true story of WrestleMania 14. Of course, before we get started, I am obligated by law to tell you to please drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you will, daddy. WrestleMania 14, as mentioned, is of course looked at as the penultimate turning point in the late 90s wrestling war between the WWF and WCW. And the WWF had been so close to overtaking WCW for months, and this was definitely pivotal. In the main event, we saw Stone Cold Steve Austin challenging Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship. And this one was tough for me, as I was a Michaels fan, but also a huge Stone Cold fan as well. But I could see the writing on the wall, though, that this was definitely Stone Cold's time to shine. Mike Tyson was added to the match as a special enforcer, aka an outside referee. Now, Tyson was originally teased as actually being in the match. In fact, the angle that brought Tyson in had Stone Cold Steve Austin get into a shoving match with Tyson. And the rumors from there are that it was discussed, especially since Shawn Michaels was rather difficult to deal with at the time and was nursing this back injury, that perhaps in an alternate universe we ended up with Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Mike Tyson, which would have been very cool but weird. And Austin defeated HBK, and Michaels would not wrestle again in WWE for over 4 years, while Austin, of course, went on to shatter records and be one of, if not the most popular champion of all time. And the event took place at Boston, Massachusetts Fleet Center Arena and drew an announced sellout crowd. And this is, I believe, still the only WrestleMania to ever be held in Boston. The show opened with a tag team battle royal, which was way different for the time. And the point of this was to re-debut the Road Warriors, aka the Legion of Doom, as LOD 2000. Where they updated their outfits a bit and were joined by the popular valet Sunny. Of course, they ended up winning that match. After that, we were treated to a light heavyweight championship match with Taka Michinoku defending against Aguila. And this was a nice and fast, quick match. And while it was pretty good, it lacked in comparison to anything that the WCW cruiserweights were doing at the time. And this is one of the earliest examples of the WWE and Vince McMahon just not getting it when it came to the lightweight talents. Michinoku would toil around in the WWF for a couple more years, while Aguila would eventually be repackaged as Essa Rios, but then soon be out of the company himself. Then from there, we went into the match between Triple H and Owen Hart for the virtually meaningless European title. And I say that as a joke, no disrespect to the Euros, but this belt was used as a silly prop for most of its existence, and I think that's why it's still retired to this day. Triple H went on to be Triple H, and Owen Hart, we all know, only made it to one more WrestleMania, and then his life was tragically ended. After that match, we had Marc Mero and Sable defeat Goldust and Luna in a mixed tag team match. The mixed tag match is like a time-honored tradition at WrestleMania nowadays, but back then this was only the second time of it happening. And this match was 9 minutes, which was probably 7 minutes too long. But that's besides the point. Marc Mero and Sable, of course, toiled around in the WWF. Sable would become one of the biggest female stars over that next year in the WWF. Mero would eventually be gone, and Goldust, well, he still wrestles to this day, and sadly, we lost to Luna Vachon a few years ago. Next up, we got a real treat as the second ever WrestleMania match for The Rock. But this was really his first as The Rock, if you know what I mean. He defeated Ken Shamrock to retain the Intercontinental Championship. And this was, of course, only the beginning of what would be a huge year for The Rock, as by year's end, he would be the company's lead heel and champion. Ken Shamrock, of course, ended up having a solid career, would be let go from the WWE a couple years later. And he would end up actually being the first NWA TNA champion, which is a nice bit of trivia for you folks. From there, we had the Cactus Jack team with Terry Funk as Chainsaw Charlie to defeat the New Age Outlaws for the tag team titles. And this was the first of its kind dumpster match, where the winner had to trap both their opponents in a real life dumpster. This was a cool moment for Mick Foley, who you can't help but love, and Terry Funk. While not his first WrestleMania appearance, this was definitely Terry Funk's most memorable. The Undertaker defeated Kane in what was basically the co-main event or semi-main event of the show. This match was built up through pretty much all of 1997 into 1998 and was great to finally see such a payoff, to the WWE's credit, for an era where it seems like they did nothing but hot shot angles. Letting this first match develop over about a 9-month span was something that was truly ingenious, and I don't think gets enough credit. This, of course, was just the first of what ended up being countless times these two would meet the squared circle over the years. All in all, WrestleMania 14, there's not a lot to it. There's not a ton of matches, but it's a lot of quality over quantity. But there's everything to it at the same time. It was definitive for its era, and while it's been said many times, I will say it again, that this launched the company into the stratosphere and set the company up for years of success under the belt of Stone Cold and The Rock, as mentioned. The buy rate for the show was through the roof and was the second best number in company history to that time, with around 730,000 buys, which made it, at the time, the second most bought WrestleMania of all time, just behind WrestleMania 5, The Mega Powers Explode. Anyway, that's going to do it for me here. I want to thank you very much for joining me. I am your excellent host, The Brand. This is Pro Wrestling Planet. I want to know, what are your favorite memories, moments, and or matches from WrestleMania 14? Let me know those down in the comments section. Also, make sure you leave a like on the video and make sure you're subbed to the channel so we can see you next time on Pro Wrestling Planet.